Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another Sunday morning of Kissin' Time, the show brought to you by Kiss fans, for Kiss fans, part of the Kaleidoscope radio magazine, heard here each and every week on KCLA 99.3 FM Los Angeles and worldwide on the internet on www.nextlevel.com/kissin'. And I'm Joe Fortunato, and speaking of the best, I'm joined each and every week by Drew Harris. Drew, how you doing?
I'm doing great this week. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing fine. And we are bringing the best today. We've, I think, outdone ourselves a little bit. We've got a very special, actually 2 shows coming up here in the next couple of weeks, bringing to you exclusive Kissin' Time interviews with Vinnie Vincent, talking about his lawsuit against Kiss that he's filed recently against Kiss, and also just his general, his coming together with the band and talking a little bit about some of the things he has coming up.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk with Vinnie earlier on in the week, and he gave me 2 hours worth of interview work. We've edited it down to 2 different shows. One you'll hear this week, one you'll hear next week. This week we'll be talking with Vinnie about the lawsuit that he's filed against Kiss, and next week will be about his time with Kiss, how he got involved in music, some of his current projects, so it's going to be very interesting for you.
Now, aside from the roving reporter Drew Harris here, we're very fortunate that Drew's also a lawyer, so you can hopefully explain some of this to us in a little bit of layman's terms. So why don't you do that right now? What exactly, in a nutshell, is this lawsuit about?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. All the legal jargon aside, which I have the lawsuit in front of me right now, and it's about 60 pages. All of the legal jargon aside, Vinnie is essentially suing for 3 things. Number 1, he's suing for royalties that he says were never paid to him. These are royalties for the albums Creatures of the Night, on which he wrote 3 songs, on Lick It Up, in which he co-wrote 8 songs, and on Revenge, which he also co-wrote 3 songs. And he claims that he has only been paid a small fraction of the royalties that have been owed to him, and that he's been defrauded from the rest of the money. He's also suing because Kiss has used his image, he says, as part of their merchandising, which Vinnie would normally have the rights to. He's claiming that as part of the History book, they have used his image to make a profit off his likeness and have not compensated him for it. And the third thing he's suing for is defamation, which is meaning that they have injured his reputation, they've spoken badly about him in ways that are false and untrue, and that he's suing them as a consequence. We'll talk a little bit after we air the interview about the merits of his different claims, but we want to get right to the interview so that we don't run out of time near the end. So why don't we get ready for that? This is an interview with Vinnie Vincent and with his attorney, Mary Parker, of Parker, Allen & Crawford. She's an entertainment lawyer in Nashville, where Vinnie lives, and they were very kind enough to take the time and talk to us about the lawsuit.
So here it is, a Kissin' Time exclusive. Vinnie Vincent talking with Drew Harris on Kissin' Time.
Now, I've read the lawsuit, and being an attorney, I understand it. I know your lawyer has read the lawsuit because she helped prepare it, but I could not think of anything that would make our audience run screaming more than having 2 attorneys talk about a lawsuit. So let me ask you, in your words, what the lawsuit is about, what you're looking for, what your grievances are, how you hope Kiss would be able to redress those grievances. I guess why don't you explain the lawsuit in your own words, Vin?
To sum it in a few words is not easy. It is a very complex issue, and it covers extensive fraud perpetrated by Gene Klein, Stanley Eisen, Polygram Records, Corey Pro Entertainment, which is a publishing company. And this is only the tip of an iceberg, which is endemic throughout the music business. And these entities are getting away with insidious, heinous behavior of stealing people's money.
And the nature of the fraud that you're talking about, it has to do with the royalties, as I understand it.
They have not paid royalties, proper accounting. There is a defamation part of the lawsuit. I've been defrauded out of my royalties, my copyrights. My copyrights have been stolen by these entities. They're defaming my name with my fan base and my people that I care so much about. And enough is enough. And you know, I've heard so so much unkind things coming from these people, and I would say to myself, why would you want to do this and say this about me after giving this group so much quality that would keep this band alive and going, and being able to survive and incredible musically. And I've given them my talents, and I feel terrible, humiliated, hurt, by this insidious behavior, and acts that they feel that they're above the law and can get away with by defaming my name to my fans, having Polygram Records condone this and put it out for sale. And I would think to myself, what would give anybody the right to feel above the law like this and have the right to hurt people, their family, their career, their livelihood, what they do by saying something of a personal nature that would defame someone. And I think to see this actually being sold for sale is repulsive. It's repugnant, and I'm offended by it, especially when this group is using my material to better their own minds. It's now time for justice. And I think people that feel that they're above the law, that can put on a costume, a suit, a disguise, and think that they can scare people and blow up bombs, fire pots, and I think that's people need to be brought down to size and answer for things that are I feel terrible acts against other people, and enough is enough basically here. And when you start financially murdering families, someone has to answer to these things, and they have to find themselves before underdogs like me in a jury, where people like myself, who are hardworking, regular, everyday people, and say, gee, that was me. I would understand.
So you're determined to take this to trial if necessary. There's, the easy speculation is to say, oh, he's looking for a quick settlement, or that the record company will settle out of court before it goes anywhere. You would prefer to take it to trial, or you would prefer to see it settled out of court?
Personally speaking, I know that Mary is on the phone here also with me, but this is not something that has just been taking place over the last couple of years. You're talking 15 years here of destroying the person's life. I have children. I have twin girls that are part of my life. I have families that is part of my life. This is my music that is my life. I have fans that are my life. I have music that I'm bringing my fans through my record company to do things that are very important. And when you have people here poisoning the water supply, so to speak, as I mentioned to you, hurting a person's life to such a degree, I think it's not just a quick settlement. I think it's justice has to prevail here for all of us. And I'm hoping that I can be the key that opens the door for any other artist listening to this program and saying, I really relate to what Vinnie Vincent is saying. This has happened to me. I'm tired of saying, where's my money? This big shell game, this whatever it is that feels that these companies are above the law and can do whatever they want because they have a huge fortress, a huge corporation, a lot of voicemail, and people could just decide we're impenetrable. If I can be a new spokesperson for people like me and lead a new crusade, I will do it.
Why did you wait till now? It seems that you have been a professional musician for a long time, I think over 30 years now, and I know some fans are suspicious to see that the lawsuit was filed only after KISS came back from its most successful tour ever. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, it was filed on, I guess, the first business day after the reunion tour ended. And I think the timing of that raised suspicion among fans because it seemed like an old guitarist was cashing in on their current success, a guitarist who I guess was excluded from the reunion in any particular way. How do you feel about that? How do you address that kind
Mary,
of feeling?
Do you want to answer that, or do you want me to answer?
No, I think you should answer that.
You know, this is not a group that I follow. So to cash in on anything is just opinion preposterous in any way. This is really just one simple message. I would get frauded, and I mean deep frauded, out of a great amount of revenue. Yes, Mary?
I think the question is why now as opposed to 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
Right.
There was a constant suspicion that I did not feel comfortable with the accounting, the royalty accounting I was receiving. And I would even personally call and say that this is not right. What I'm receiving is not right. And finally, I had researched and spent a great amount of time finding a top litigator. And I searched high, low, exactly to find the right person. And I knew that after the revenge nightmare for me, that there was something terribly wrong. And I remind them that we really don't, we don't know the facts. Some people feel that at least by the time that nothing is wrong, and who feels he's having his royalties stolen, go back. So some people have raised the question that by writing songs for the band or with the band again for revenge, that they kind of cast a shadow over your intentions.
Well, let me interject.
Yeah.
I don't think it casts a shadow at all. I think it's right in line with what actually happened. And when he went back to help with the right songs for the Revenge album, it's clear that he didn't realize and didn't know at that time the nature of all of.
I came to Mary when I had researched who was tops in the business, in the field, and she put a team of experts together and really looked over everything and said, this goes really far back. And that's what brought all of this, probably more coincidentally than ever, filing on the date that it was filed. Again, I don't follow the band. I don't know really what they're doing other than the reunion. I didn't even realize that the band was in wherever they were, which was probably, I was told, Europe, and that they were even coming home. And I thought to myself, well, that's a coincidence. Welcome home.
Right.
Welcome home. And, just when you thought you buried Vinnie Vincent, just when you thought you shoveled the last amount of dirt over my last breath, you probably didn't realize Vinnie wasn't completely dead. Still breathing, fighting that way out of the hole that you buried me in, and I'm coming back, and I want justice.
Do your bad feelings go all the way back to the Creatures of the Night album?
Yes, they do. It was, there's a number of feelings, and there's just a very beginning picture of all this. And when you count up what the give and take was, it's sad. It really is sad, because what was given to the band on my part, I felt was so valuable. And I would think that people like this would thank someone who has given so much that has kept them so credible.
You were considered a session musician by the band at the time, because from their standpoint you were just filling in for Ace, but your lawsuit alleges that you were a member of the band at the time. How do you make that transition in your thinking? How do you argue that?
Answer that.
Okay. The problem is, and I think you'd agree with me, if he was paid as a session musician and accepted that payment, then perhaps he is a session musician, regardless of what appears on the album. He was not paid for their sessions. He was not even paid the standard, what's the name of the
AFM.
AFM, American Federation of Musicians, requirements for being a session musician. He didn't, he was paid nothing. He was clearly a member of the band. He was one of the four. All of the case law and all of the statutory provisions that are out there indicate that he was a, quote, member of the band, and he should be paid as such. He had no contract with them that would in any way obviate him for being a member of the band. He was a member of the band.
Okay, let me ask you about the contracts with the band. Now, your lawsuit emphasizes the fact that you hadn't signed any contracts, and in fact that you felt that the contract terms were unconscionable, which is a legal term meaning that they were just so outrageous that they demanded so many outrageous conditions that they couldn't possibly be fair in any way. And at the same time that you are saying that you never signed the contract that would make you a member of the band, you are still saying that you were a member of the band, that you were a member of the band for Creatures of the Night, and that you were a member of the band for Lick It Up. And do you feel that there's an inconsistency there in any way, that on the one hand you're trying to say you were a member of the band, and then on the other hand you're saying, but I never signed on to be a member of the band? Do you find any inconsistency in that?
Yeah.
I think we should answer that.
No, you can clearly be a member of the band. I mean, you can have a band where they have no written contract. You're still a band.
Right.
They perform a song on an album altogether and nobody's ever had a written contract. Then there are statutory provisions within the copyright law that kick in to who gets what. And Vinnie's saying he stands in that position of having a statutory right to royalties because he never signed the written contract that was presented to him. The reason he never signed it are reasons that he can explain to you, but essentially they were terms that he absolutely would not agree to.
What were some of the terms?
Well, that contract would have made me an employee.
Just a salaried, $2,000, $2,500 a week.
When you mentioned the word unconscionable and said the definition that you said, you can't imagine how right you are. And when you say outrageous demand, I mean, it was inhumane, it was slavery, and it was something that you wouldn't imagine anyone ever even thinking of signing.
What were some of the specifics, some of the things that you found so objectionable?
Well, to be honest with you, that I would have never owned any of my works. I would have gotten paid nothing. I would have been owned by this situation, these types, forever, including any children's children I may have had. And there wasn't. It was all for me, none for you, and forever and ever and ever. And basically, it was just a glorified slavery contract, and I worked very hard to work with them to find a negotiation with it. They never yielded. There was nothing to talk about afterwards, and there was no reason to be in this group after a time period.
So you were trying to work out the arrangements with them, because I guess one question would be, why would you keep showing up for work if there was no contract, no employment contract?
It was trying to be worked out, but no terms were ever agreed to. And at some point when you are, it was just an incredible lie I was living, where people would think you're in this group, you're writing these songs, and you had nothing and never a chance to have anything.
What was some of
it was a very sad situation. At some point, any intelligent being would say, well, what is this for? What is the purpose of this?
Well, again, I have to emphasize, we don't know any of the facts of what you're telling us, but certainly we're...
Well, the facts are, if you're asking me from my side, this is a contract that couldn't be signed.
Right.
Otherwise, it would have.
You mentioned in your lawsuit, you mentioned a couple of times that they tried to pressure you into signing the contract using various tactics. Why don't you tell us about that?
Oh, that's a very difficult one to answer. It's very personal, and rather, instead of answering the exact things, I would say that it was just very, very uncomfortable from day one to today. And
Okay, that's fair enough. I mean, I don't want to ask you to, quote unquote, relive a difficult period in your life. I know one thing comes to mind for me, and that's that while you were recording, they put you up in a hotel in Times Square, which I'm from New York. I can tell you Times Square is, especially in that period of time, is an absolute rat hole.
Well, that's one instance I can tell you about if you would like to hear it. I can
Sure.
give you a blow-by-blow description of it, which is comfortable for me to talk about. The Times Square rat hole, and it was an embarrassment. I was humiliated. I was very hurt by this, and yet I came up with the Lick It Up album throughout this incredible duress for 4 months, and there was no air conditioning. It was the dead of summer, and it was a really, really, it was a life-changing experience because that was my decision to say enough is enough, and I will not stay here. I will not watch you drive to your penthouses uptown and leave me in a cockroach-infested place like this while I am coming up with material for this record, including the song Lick It Up, including the title, and giving this band, as much of me as you want and need in order for me to prove, my worth to the situation, and also because I cared so much. And then be a victim of this propaganda for the next 13 years. This is about justice now. This is about justice for everything we talked about. This is not any emotional anything here. This is justice about what was done, and you have the lawsuit, you see all the allegations. And that time period there was the beginning of the end. And I think what caused the final end was to treat me in such a disrespectful, inhumane way and have me pay my own expenses. This is not something that these people paid for, okay? This is something that me, with a wife and family, 2 little children, had to pay for myself. And this is not saying that, well, we'll give you a break here and we'll throw you in here and we'll pay for it. No, this was out of my pocket. And let me tell you what it's like, which no one probably would really know this until they know it. But when you're laying in bed and you're finding something that's kind of tickling places where you're, not supposed to be feeling anything, certain feelings like this especially, and you look down there and there's something crawling there that is creeping on all over your bed, under your sheets, under your pillow, in the walls, when you try to take a shower, and it looks like a coating of a blackish brown shielded coating, and you realize you scrape it away, and these are cockroaches. And you go, okay, I think this is not really what I thought. This is not comfortable for me.
To say nothing of the prostitutes and drug dealers that hang in the Times Square area.
Well, to say it was dangerous was an understatement.
Let me ask you, as we're going to have to wrap up this first half of our interview about the lawsuit, and I really have to say thanks for going over, some of the facts of the lawsuit, some of the legal issues involved, because being an attorney, I know that it can be very difficult on a party to be in a lawsuit, and especially to talk about it. You have mentioned to me that you think it's also kind of a positive experience for you. I guess there's some measure of catharsis, and it's giving you a sense of purpose in a way that you want to expose what you feel the record companies have done to people.
I'm here for one reason. It's because I care and I love my fans. I play a guitar. I feel my purpose was to bring my music to people that would listen, and hopefully enjoy what I do. And that was it. It was nothing greater than that. And now with the lawsuit, I actually feel that I have even increased purpose in my life by opening a door for other artists and publishers and writers that are being screwed to death by these kind of insidious types that don't care what they do to people. Record companies. I'll tell you something, Drew. If I can, I will open the door to bring these record companies down that are screwing people. And it's an amazing job they're doing. KISS are right there with them, and if I have a greater purpose in mind, it's to bring justice to more people like myself that have suffered at the hands of these times. So it is so positive that it is a new crusade in, I think, both my life and Mary's life and the other people involved in this and the attorneys, because now we can be the first to say, well, you didn't break us, you didn't leave us out for dead, and figure, well, we'll leave you so poverty-ridden that you won't have the money to fight us. And as long as you don't get into that and we're not ever have to answer for what we've done, then we still get away with it. So it's so positive because we will be the first, and if others want to follow, then they will have the courage, hopefully, to open that door and say, hey, that happened to me, I'm not going to let you get away with it. I want what was right for mine. And not be blackballed throughout the industry by types that feel they can throw their propaganda on weak listeners and whoever will follow them and be influenced. And as soon as people start to realize that, you know, I want to think for myself here and stop having someone else think for me, then you start to make your own decisions, and then most people will come up with the right thing their heart will tell them to do.
Vinnie, thanks a lot for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Mary. Thanks a lot.
You're most welcome, Drew.
Okay.
Powerful words from Vinnie Vincent there about the lawsuits, and we have literally very little time here to wrap this up. I have one thought about this. Not having a representative in this studio from Polygram or the KISS company.
And we should say we contacted them and they did not reply. So
okay, that's a good point. But I want to say, personally, it's very interesting what Vinnie has to say, and I've read this lawsuit as well, and whereas there's a few things that I question in the lawsuit is that's maybe a little bit reaching for a brass ring that doesn't exist. A lot of it has some validity, especially if some of it is true. And I'm inclined to believe with some of the things we may have seen with Bruce and Eric of late, and also just common record company procedures, there may be some merit to this.
yeah, that's a really good observation. I agree that there's some overreaching, particularly for the merchandising rights that he's claiming and for the defamation suit. We don't have time to go into the reasons why that's overreaching. Whether he wins on the royalty issues or not really depends on the facts. If his allegations of fraud are true, then he'll win, and if he's manufacturing allegations, then he probably won't. So that's really what it'll come down to.
And I can say it's not uncommon in the recording industry and in the movie industry. Accounting procedures in the film industry are unbelievably sketchy, and so it's it's not something that it's hard to believe. So that's it for Kissin' Time this week. We were going to have part 2 of our interview with Vinnie Vincent next week. Join us for more exclusively on Kissin' Time. For Drew Harris, I'm Joe Fortunato. We'll see you next week. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Sunday morning of Kissin' Time, the show brought to you by KISS fans for KISS fans, heard each and every week on KCLA 99.3 FM Los Angeles, part of the Kaleidoscope Radio magazine, and worldwide on the internet in real audio at www.nextlevel.com/kissin'. I'm Joe Fortunato. I'm joined as always by Drew Harris. Drew, how you doing?
I'm doing great this week. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing fabulous, and another great installment of Kissin' Time this week. Those of you who joined us last week were treated to an exclusive interview with Vinnie Vincent talking about his lawsuit against KISS. This week, another exclusive with Vinnie Vincent talking about some of the upcoming things, some of his past history with the band, and all kinds of great things.
Yeah, before we jump into the second part of the interview, I wanted to extend a personal thanks to Vinnie for taking the time to talk to us. I had originally requested about a 40-minute interview with him, and he actually stayed on the phone with his attorney for 2 hours. And we've edited the interview down into 2 half-hour shows, but he really did take quite a bit of time for us, and so we really appreciate that.
And I want to second that. We do very much appreciate it, and it's good to hear, from Vinnie himself what his feelings, his thoughts were. And we're going to hear some more of that today.
Yeah, here's a chance for people to really hear things from Vinnie firsthand. He's certainly the most controversial member of KISS throughout its history, and it's a chance to hear from him directly. One thing we should mention at the top of the show is that he talks about the Vinnie Vincent archives pretty extensively. This is a box set that Vinnie's putting out. It's been delayed, but it will be out this October. It's got 9 hours worth of music on it. I think it's 6 high-quality cassettes, And we'll give you some ordering information at the end of the show, but we just wanted to mention that at the beginning so you'll see what he's referring to when he talks about it.
Okay, so here it is, part 2 of our exclusive Kissin' Time interview with Vinnie Vincent.
Hi, this is Drew Harris for Kissin' Time. I am joined again, as last week, by Vinnie Vincent, former guitarist for Kiss, as well as Vinnie's current attorney, Mary Parker. Last week, myself, Vinnie, and I, and Mary talked about the lawsuit that he had filed against Kiss and Gene Simmons. And this week, we're going to be talking about some of Vinnie's current projects, his time with Kiss, and a couple other things that may come up along the way. Vinnie, how are you doing today?
Having me back.
And Mary, how are you?
Hi, fine, Drew. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's really great. We really have to say thanks for taking the time to get on the phone with us. You guys are out in Nashville, and one thing that a lot of our listeners always ask us when we talk to our listeners, either we get mail or we get email over the internet, is when your name comes up, a lot of people are really interested to hear exactly how you got involved with Kiss. And I don't know if that's been talked about a great deal, so why don't you tell us that story?
We're turning the clocks back here. It was introduced, but the actual, how can I put this? A song of mine called Back on the Streets brought me to the band. And it was heard by the producer of the band at that time, and I think Kiss was looking for the direction of where the record was going to begin, which was untitled at the time, but it was the Creatures album. And they were auditioning many guitarists, and I had a demo of Back on the Streets, which that particular demo will be on the Vinnie Vincent archives, which will be released, and I don't think many people have. It may not even be available on bootleg version anywhere, but it is the version of the demo that I did in 1980, early 1980. And this is the music store. And this is really in the back. And this is the demo that I worked at.
This is the demo that got you your entree or your introduction into Kiss.
That was it. And,
wow.
And they wanted to do the song. They wanted to have the first chance to record that song for that particular album, and that really was the actual introduction. And then Gene asked me to come and do some writing, and we began with Killer. I think was the first track. It was mostly the vibe was going very well, and I think that was mostly my track, and that was the first thing we came up with. Then I Love It Loud and others. And then he suggested to Paul to work with me, and we came up with a bunch of great stuff.
Yeah, I Still Love You, which the band performed all the way through the Revenge era. They performed that song, because on a Live 3.
Going through the tapes for the Vinnie Vincent archive, most people don't realize that I have almost 2,000 hours of material on tape, and the tape room is so jammed with tapes, from 2-inch tapes to cassettes to DATs, that the assembly of the archives was so enormous a task that I mean, pulling tapes out, I discovered even versions of the very beginning times we met, and the tape running, and Paul and I working on I Still Love You, and the very first idea for Lick It Up, you know, with our guitars and the cheap amp, and, you know, just the tape running with the ideas. And then there's, I ran across the original version of Gene and I working out I Love It Loud, which was originally called Loud and Proud. And these are all tapes that were, you know, that were part of the Vinnie Vincent Archives assembly process and deciphering of what was going to go on, you know, almost 10 hours of music. And it was just the most enormous task. And
that sounds just outstanding. We should mention for our listeners, the Vinnie Vincent Archives is a box set that you're producing right now, and we'll get to talk about that in a couple of minutes. It's a box set of, you know, everything, I guess, from your archives, all the demos that you recorded while you were with Kiss, stuff from Invasion, I guess stuff from Warrior, maybe?
Well, it was whatever lasted about a month and a half, and I picked a quick name and named it that, and went in this record plant, L.A., and cut the precursor to "And on the Eighth Day," which at that time was called "Boys Are Gonna Rock."
Right.
Which became "And on the Eighth Day."
And then became "Boys Are Gonna Rock."
Boys Are Gonna Rock
all over
again,
again.
but a whole different revamp of it. And it contains, we'll cover all that, but yeah, it contains even, what I wanted to do was to create a span that was from 13 years old, my first group called The Younger Generation, with when I found this, I just couldn't believe that this is still in existence. And someone said, "Play it, Vinny," and I'm 13 years old, and there's a recording which my dad paid for, and here I am playing with my fuzz tone, and I'm going, this is actually, it's a lot to hear for somebody that was able to even hear that far back and saying, "Whoa, that just happened yesterday." And it takes it right up to today, which will feature 3 or 4 songs from Guitarmageddon, which everybody around the world has been asking me for. And I said, I really want to give my fans something that I feel is so special that I will be so proud to have this as representing me now, And it takes up to live guitar performances from Creatures and the Lick It Up tour, and some very special moments, covering a lot of demos, outtakes.
It's very exciting. I myself am really looking forward to hearing it. You mentioned something really interesting a second ago, and damned if I'm not going to ask you about this. How did you get involved in music? You talked about being 13 and playing guitar. How did you get involved in rock music, and did you study professionally, and what was your first professional work?
I came from a really poor family, but we were real close-knit, and my mom and dad were country music fans. So, my early years were spent with hearing that. My father played pedal steel guitar. My mother really had a beautiful voice, and we just recently found a recording that an acetate recording that they recorded 40 years ago. So, I was a kid, and there was a lot of discoveries in going through the archives that were being presented to the fans. And I grew up in that environment, and there were musicians, in the actual house always, and I had great players. So I loved that plunking on a guitar when I was 4 or 5 years old. There's pictures of me with that. So my ears, it took it took all of my life up at that early moment, and that's how it began. But I wasn't a country music fan, and rock and roll was there, and I think the background was just the background of their support for me, the support system for me throughout my years. But they sacrificed. I had a great mom and dad. They sacrificed their lives to make it possible for me to do what I do.
I'd like to throw something in, Drew. You mentioned that the archives is a collection of all of the things that Vinnie's done in the past, but there's a lot of new stuff on there, and some of it is particularly unique and love ballads, something that he wrote for his wife. Just some beautiful stuff that is really different and outside the metal. Not so much that the typical fans listening to it, but enough that Mom and Dad are going to enjoy hearing some of it too.
I agree with you, Mary. I mentioned to Vinnie before we started the interview that I'm a collector, something of a collector of Vinnie Vincent Esoterica, and I have some recordings he may even be embarrassed about, like I have a recording, a CD of Dan Hartman's in which he played guitar on, which actually was a bunch of disco songs.
No, actually it wasn't an embarrassment. I really had a lot of respect for Dan, and he was one of those really talented people that I admired a lot, so I enjoyed it a lot. It was just that it was disco, and it was the time period, and he actually did not start his band as a disco band.
That's right. It started as a rock band.
As a hard rock band, and then he was doing these disco recordings on the side. One of those songs caught on in the disco market, and he says, I really have to cancel the rock thing, and my disco record took off, so would you want to come around the world playing lip-syncing on TV shows? And I just thought, really? Yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Well, now there's something to include in the archives of videotape of you performing on some obscure TV shows across the world.
Very obscure stuff, and but it was a lot of fun, and it was a really fond memory. But it was never a musical band, so it was almost an error that happened, and it was just an enjoyable, twist of the turning of the fate. But and I ended up in Los Angeles because the last show of that tour was on the Dinah Shore show in 1978, I think it was. And he said you can either have a ticket back to New York, or you can stay here, and here's your $125. And I said, I'm going to stay here. You know, I'll take the $125. I'll stay here and see what happens.
So there's actually Vinnie Vincent footage on the Dinah Shore show?
There is.
Wow, that's amazing.
Performing instant replay. We did a lot of those shows that were on the air then because of that song. So it was most people probably don't realize some of the things that was so ironic, including working at We Buy Guitars in New York City in I think it was 77, 79, but really wonderful people that gave me a job and selling guitars, and I love these people. They were wonderful. They were like my second family, and they gave me a job, and I thank them always for it. And wonderful people. We recorded back in the streets the first demo in the back of that store on an 8-track. And a lot of these little moments are on the archive. You know?
That's a real excitement. Yeah. I have to say, as I've collected, and not just for Vinnie Vincent, rare material, but also Bruce Kulick, rare material, or other Kiss members. I'm really interested to see the different projects that you have worked on. You've co-written a song for the Bangles. You've worked on an album by a band called Was Not Was, which had been around in the 80s, I suppose. Your songs have been covered by John Waite, who covered a song called Tears that was a hit for him.
Right.
And it's interesting for me to see that Peter Criss also covered that song on his, I think it was his Let Me Rock You album.
Yeah, Peter did a nice version of it. And my original version of Tears will also be on the archive. And I don't think anyone has this version, but this was when I first wrote the song and recorded it, and this is the one that I guess people heard when they were recording the song. So this will also be on the archives, and split up into, since there are 6 tapes in the Vinnie Vincent archive, they are listed as the different moments and in time and the different styles that I guess make me who I am.
Just wanted to briefly mention, you had brought up the song Back on the Streets. I wanted to mention for some of our listeners that song was covered by Ace Frehley in concert quite extensively. I think he had planned to include it on an album that was never released, because I have heard a studio demo version of him and Ace Frehley and Frehley's Comet doing that song. And I just think it's great that, Peter Criss covers one of your songs, Ace Frehley covers one of your songs. It's just kind of cool to hear.
Speaking of that version with Ace there, it's really ironic, but someone sent me a version of the live thing that he did, and I thank him very much. I think he did a real nice job, and for all the Ace fans, I thank you very much, and you guys are great. And I was honored that he recorded the song. And it real nice.
Yeah, I know I mentioned to you previously, I should mention for our listeners that a reunited Frehley's Comet is going to be recording and performing that song on a new CD called Return of the Comet, which is kind of a Frehley's Comet and Kiss tribute album. And so it should be cool to hear an officially released version from the Frehley's Comet band doing that song.
I thank you guys. Thank you very, very much. It's really appreciated. I appreciate you recording the song. That's probably going to be real good.
Let me ask you, this may sound like a strange question, but when I mentioned to a few friends that I would be talking to you, they said, you know what? Ask Vinnie what he thinks of Ace as a guitarist. And it's not to invite one of those competitions or comparisons, but I listened to, old tapes of you in concert playing some of the songs that Ace Frehley had recorded, and the songs, when performed by you, sound tremendously different, like you're very different kinds of guitarists. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on his playing.
Well, I think we're all different people. So, one person can't be another, and, when you say that, when I interpret it, it's a whole different thing, and it's just because he's not me, and I'm not him, and we all have our way of saying what we say. So, it's difficult from a guitar standpoint to say what you think of someone else, but I appreciate so much what everybody does, because it comes from their soul and their heart and their way of playing. So, we all just do what we do.
Right. Yeah. I think your songs, when you would play, say, Cold Gin or another Kiss song, I think you made it different, not because you thought Ace's work was unsatisfactory, but because you were Vinnie Vincent playing on the song, and not Vinnie Vincent imitating Ace playing on the song, or imitating someone else playing on the song.
To be honest with you, when I heard some of these live performances that we did, and I would let you know this, and all the people, I have taped every single live show. I have every single live show for Creatures and Lick It Up on tape. And when I heard him back, I really didn't realize how good we really were.
I think you guys sounded great.
We were great. And I think it should have been something, had the treatment of me been fair, and my fair compensation had been properly rewarded, I think we would have had an incredible band. And I think we would have really given some amazing musical gifts to rock music. But this was discovered by me and hearing us live, because whatever happened on one end, we were good. We were really good.
Yeah, we recently played on this show we had a copy of the King Biscuit Flower Hour, which was a rock concert radio show from the 70s and 80s. It may still be around. And we had a recording that they had done, and we got permission to use it to, it had been from the Lick It Up tour, and we recently played that. And just to hear you and Eric on drums, Eric, always a phenomenal drummer, and you on guitar.
Oh, yeah, I loved Eric playing.
Yeah.
And, he was a good friend, and we had a good vibe. Musically, we had a great vibe, and don't let anybody tell you any different. It clicked. It happened. There was chemistry. It was on fire. We felt the same thing, and I think if we kept going, it would have been pretty special.
Let me ask you about Eric. What were your thoughts? How were you affected by his passing?
Very deeply, and it stays with me today while we're talking. I feel it. I don't think there's really a day when I don't think about him. He was a good soul, a gift, in a world of slime balls. He was a gift. He was really a special individual, great drummer, and I loved him. I loved playing with him. He made me laugh. Fans loved him. He was a gifted person in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
very creative, great drummer, and he was a good songwriter. So, and going through the archives tapes, we had rehearsal tapes from Lick It Up and Creatures, and to hear everybody talking and playing, was nice.
Let me ask you. I want to take you back to the makeup era for a moment, because this has always been a question that I've been interested in asking you. I always liked your makeup, and it always disappointed me that it never appeared on any of the album covers. And I always thought the whole Egyptian Ankh, the whole pharaoh or Egyptian warrior or wizard character was very interesting. How did you come up with that makeup? Was that something that you came up with? Was it a collaboration with the band?
It was what I would like to say about it, and I would like to choose what I would like to say, if you don't mind.
That's okay.
I'd like to say that it was a timeless, mysterious look, and it was very good. It really had something, and it should have been on record covers. With me.
Right.
There should have been the four of us at that time on record, and it really missed the mark.
As I talk to you about your time with Kiss, I hear in your voice some bitterness, because of course it's ended up in a lawsuit, but I also hear sometimes some great affection for that era and the people involved, or the work that you did. What is your best memory of having been with Kiss?
Very easy question for me. The affection you hear is that we made musical history, and that we had a great musical relationship, and probably the best I've ever encountered, because it was musically very real, and very potent, and very creative, very original. The style was forged. It really had the beginnings of serious promise, and you're also, I think sometimes when you look back in time of something you've done, there is a nostalgia in it. And when you see so many people care about what we did, it makes a proud person, But The sad part is that I was not properly, fairly compensated for my works, and that it had to result in a lawsuit of defrauding me of the royalties of my work for this, what I gave them, and stealing my copyrights and benefiting off the blood that I shed for this group. And that's the good and bad. So we're trying to work it out, and maybe justice will prevail, and the story will be made right.
That's an interesting perspective. We're running out of time here, and I have to say that I thank you again for taking the time to do this with us. Let me ask you one more quick question before we go.
I'm all yours.
Any plans for an autobiography to be released through either your new Metaluna company or through a publisher?
I'm so happy you answered that. Mary, you want to grab that one there?
Oh, well, there's an outline done, and we've been talking to the publisher.
I find that very exciting.
I do too. It's really intriguing.
Well, it really covers the truth and the facts and a lot of questions that people have been asking for a long time, and no one could really tell someone else in an interview. It can't be done that way. It really has to be. It has to be done by me, and I can't do it with a ghostwriter. They really have to be my words, how I say them, how I feel them, and so we're hoping to have something out this year or within the next year, because so many people have finally asked me that question, and I think it's time to do it.
And it's a whole lot more than a kiss and tell book. It's information that young artists can take and learn from and do right and not make the same mistakes. Wonderful information.
Vinnie,
Yeah, I'm real happy about it. Yes.
Thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate you taking the time.
And I want to thank my fans for staying there with me, hanging in there with me, and the believers. I thank you with all my heart, and I love all you guys. I really do.
Vinnie Vincent on Kissin' Time. You are listening to Kissin' Time, the show brought to you by Kiss fans, for Kiss fans, heard each and every week, of course, worldwide on the internet at www.nextlevel.com/kissin', and each week here in Los Angeles. I'm Joe Fortunato. I'm joined by Drew Harris. We just heard our second part of our Vinnie Vincent interview, and good stuff again.
Thanks a lot, Joe. It was really a pleasure to talk to Vinnie, and you can hear he's a very articulate person. He's a very likable person when you speak to him on the phone. He expresses true affection for his fans, and if that's really, if that's his true self, so to speak, and not the image that's been perpetuated about him for all of these years, and it's a real shame that people have not gotten to know the real Vinnie Vincent.
That's the thing that really, when I was listening to this interview, that I came away with, and I was so impressed with Vinnie's articulateness, his candor, his intelligence, quite frankly, answering all the questions, not only the lawsuit that we discussed last week, but just some of the questions you asked this week about his past with the band. And and I don't, I'm not friends with Vinnie. I'm not friends with Gene and Paul. I've met Gene and Paul. I don't know these people personally. However, I felt like I got to know Vinnie a little bit better through that interview, and I like what I got to know.
Thanks. And actually, I felt like I got to know him better too. Also, as you can hear, probably listening to the interview, there have been parts that have been edited out. A lot of my talking that I took out. But we have more audio footage of Vinnie that we will probably air at a later date when probably when his box set comes out, because he talked extensively about it. I wanted to take the time to give out some information about his box set and about some of the things that he has coming up. He's got the Vinnie Vincent archives that he talked about, which is 9 hours worth of demos, outtakes, ballads, all sorts of cool stuff. If you're a Vinnie Vincent fan, here's a phone number where you can get in touch with Metaluna Records. It's 615-244-3556, and they've got a fax number also, 615-255-6037. And on the internet, Vinnie is found at www.vinnievincent.com. It's got a lot of really cool graphics. It takes a while to download all the graphics, but once they're downloaded, it's a really great site, so people should check it out.
Why don't you give those numbers one more time real quick?
Sure, no
people
problem.
Who are grabbing pens.
It's the phone number for Metaluna is 615-244-3556, and the fax number is 255-6037, and we'll in the future we'll be giving out more information on the Vinnie Vincent archives and the Euphoria CD that he's going to be releasing here in the United States, and a bunch of other stuff. So stay tuned.
And once again, just on a couple of personal notes, thank you so much, Drew, for conducting that interview. It was very good stuff. And thank you, Vinnie Vincent, for sitting down with us here at Kissin' Time and telling your side of the story and telling us some stories we hadn't heard before and just getting to know you a little better. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure.
So that's going to wrap it up for us here on another week of Kissin' Time. We hope we'll see you next week for more talk about the band Kiss. For Drew Harris, I'm Joe Fortunato. We will see you next time on the All Kiss Show, Kissin' Time.